Have you ever found yourself intrigued by the mysterious origins of Paldea's enigmatic Area Zero? Or found yourself wondering about the lone crystallized tree hidden in its depths? Well, get ready for an electrifying ride, because we're about to plunge headfirst into an exhilarating theory that will surely change the way you see Paldea forever. So stay tuned for a journey into the unknown. Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Kanto here, and today's theory has been brewing on my mind for quite a while. And honestly, I don't know why I didn't make this video sooner, but I'm glad I didn't, because with the recent release of the amazing Indigo Disc DLC, I noticed something that gave this theory even more ground to stand on, which in turn led to my theory becoming even longer than I originally planned, forcing me to explain it in two different parts. So in the first half of the video, we'll dive into the narrative of my theory, and I'll explain it in the form of a story. Then, in the second part, I'll break down the reasoning behind it all and try to cover any loopholes there may have been. So let me begin, and let's travel back in time and find out the true origins of Area Zero. Our story starts a little over 3,000 years ago, when the Kalos Empire clashed in a fierce war with the begoing Paldean Empire. It was a battle for supremacy, each vying for control over coveted territories and valuable resources. The spark that ignited the war? Kalos thirsted for more, eyeing the southern expansion into Paldea, aiming to seize control of the land, including the vast expanse around the legendary Great Crater of Paldea. Yet AZ, reigning as the King of Kalos during this time, harboured no desire for war against Paldea. Despite holding the title of king, his authority was concentrated by constitutional limits imposed by other branches of government, limiting his ability to unilaterally dictate the kingdom's course of action. As the war continued its relentless onslaught, countless Pokemon fell in the line of duty. The escalating demand for fresh reinforcements led to desperate measures. The citizens of Kalos were compelled to contribute their Pokemon to the front line. Even AZ, the revered king, had to surrender his cherished Pokemon, fostering a collective sense of sacrifice among the people. Years passed, and as the war proceeded, a somber moment unfolded when AZ received a box containing his once beloved Pokemon, now lost to the ravages of conflict. Fueled by rage over the loss of his beloved Pokemon, in a war which he never sought, AZ embarked on a mission to defy death itself. He crafted a machine with the power to resurrect his Pokemon. Unsatisfied with mere resurrection, his anger sought a greater vengeance, so he transformed the machine into an ultimate weapon of mass destruction. He then unleashed it upon the heart of the ongoing battle, a devastating strike right into the Great Crater of Paldea. In his quest to halt the war, AZ had just obliterated the catalyst, both sides converted. However, victory came at a harrowing cost. Countless innocent lives, both human and Pokemon, were taken in the fiery aftermath. The once great crater turned into a desolate wasteland. Witnessing the catastrophic consequences of his actions, even his resurrected Pokemon fled, overwhelmed by the fear and sorrow that accompanied the heavy toll executed by AZ's pursuit for resurrection and revenge. Haunted by the aftermath of his choices, AZ chose to depart from his kingdom, embarking on a quest to seek out his beloved resurrected Pokemon once more. The once thriving ecosystem of the Great Crater became a haunting reminder, shrouded in fear. As the years rolled by, an unintentional no man's land emerged organically between the two empires. Through the destruction, a glimmer of hope emerged for the Great Crater of Paldea. In its vast expanse, the legendary Pokemon Xerneas detected the profound imbalance in nature. Venturing into the depths of a now expanded crater, Xerneas channeled its life force energy, breathing life back into the once barren landscape. The majestic creature then transformed into a magnificent tree, taking root in one of the newly revealed chambers unearthed by the blast of the ultimate weapon. As time passed, Pokemon began to return to the crater, adapting and thriving within the revitalized terrain. The once dead ecosystem, revitalized by Xerneas, found renewal, blossoming into a testament of nature's resilience and the enduring spirit of life. Through the passage of thousands of years, a new Paldean empire emerged, and the once feared Great Crater was declared safe for expeditions by the reigning Paldean king. and over time it was formally designated the name Area Zero. However, the aftermath of the ultimate weapon's energy from millennia past rendered the depths of Area Zero highly unstable. Wild Pokemon were now much stronger and would undergo a mysterious transformation that would later be called terastallization, and the fabric of space and time would unknowingly fluctuate. This instability would become a key factor in the future success of the Professor's time machine. But I bet you probably got a ton of questions and are already spotting potential loopholes in this wild theory. Well, worry not, it's time to tackle all these queries as we jump into the next part of my video, where everything comes together and starts to make sense, so let's dive right into it. We've already established that the Kalos War unfolded 3,000 years ago, but why do I believe it involved Paldea rather than another region like Galar, for instance? Well, for starters, Galar, which we assume is relatively close to Kalos, is challenging to reach without water transportation. Even though water-type Pokemon exist, Pokeballs weren't around 3,000 years ago. We learned they were invented around the time of Legend Arceus, set approximately 150 years in the past. So it would have been more practical to engage in conflict with a region on the same landmass, considering the geographical inspiration of both Kalos and Paldea from France and Spain. It just makes the most sense. Now, the idea that I said they were battling over land and resources, it's honestly not that far-fetched. Many conflicts, even today, stem from these very factors. Back in ancient times, with empires rapidly expanding, the need for extra land was pressing. It's plausible that Kalos wanted control over the Great Crater, drawn in by its abundance of resources. Considering the territorial nature of empires back then, it wouldn't be surprising if there was a settlement inside the crater, like a symbolic marker of ownership for the Paldean Empire to claim it as their own. Another significant reason of why I lead towards Paldea rather than another region is the abundance of old watchtowers scattered across the region. Most are connected to the north and east, precisely where Kalos would have advanced from. Building a multitude of watchtowers isn't a casual design and not something you just come up with overnight. It suggests a strategic need. Moreover, let's not overlook the numerous ruined buildings throughout the Paldea region that are often inhabited by ghost-type Pokemon. To me, these remnants seem more than just abandoned structures. They evoke the aftermath of some kind of fire or fallout. It's these visual clues that steer my theory towards Paldea and the Kalos War narrative. So now that we've established that Paldea was at war with Kalos, let's focus on a central figure in this theory, the ancient king of Kalos, AZ. Our attention is drawn to the idea that AZ once ruled Kalos, a notion emphasised when Lysandre, the leader of Team Flare, notes the striking resemblance between AZ and the old king from 3,000 years ago. This suspicion gains traction when we discover that AZ has surpassed the age of 3,000. Despite his royal status, it's not uncommon for other members of the royal family or parliamentary figures to make decisions independently, sometimes without informing or even overruling the king on certain matters. AZ, despite being king, lacked control over the war, which was exemplified by the heartbreaking scenario of his beloved Floette being sent to the front lines, which he clearly didn't have any decision in. Regarding his Floette, it's plausible that AZ was coerced into handing it over, possibly as a strategic move to encourage others willingly to follow suit. Which is exactly like a scenario where if a well-known figure purchases food from an unpopular place, many people would then flock to buy the same food, simply because they witnessed someone they trust and admire making that choice. Okay, so we kind of know the tale of AZ's machine, which he crafted and unleashed upon Paldea in a fit of rage. Initially designed to revive his cherished Floette, it inadvertently bestowed eternal life upon both the Pokemon and AZ himself. However, the deliberate nature of its immortality remains shrouded in mystery, but what we do know is that AZ, fueled by anger, repurposed the machine into a weapon and directed its destructive force towards Paldea. Some believe he might have targeted Kalos instead. However, this notion defies all logic. Why would anyone launch a weapon of mass destruction on their own country, even if they're overcome by rage? Transitioning to the climax of the tale, the blast from the ultimate weapon struck down, targeting the Great Crater. AZ's strategic reasoning behind this choice is clear: to end a war that resolved around territory and control of the Great Crater, the epicenter of the conflict. Given its significance as a focal point desired by the Kalos Empire, it naturally became a hotbed for the ongoing battle, but by obliterating it with a destructive blast, both sides lost something of equal value, effectively bringing the war to a halt. This is also the reason why the Great Crater we see today looks otherworldly. The blast from AZ's weapon drastically altered the terrain, wiping out all life, nature, and the settlement that once thrived within, reducing everything to ash. And as a result, a vast hole was left in the middle, reaching down to the depths. But that's not the end of the story. A colossal side effect emerged from the blast: terastallization, not of Pokemon, at least not yet, but the crystallization within the crater. Yes, I'm suggesting that the power to terastallize was set into motion by AZ's weapon. It might sound far-fetched, but consider this. The design of the weapon mirrors the crystals we see within the Great Crater. If this energy was inherent within the weapon, it could have become embedded within the very essence of the Great Crater, causing an abundance of crystals to form from the ground up. But this knowledge remained shrouded for several thousand years, as the inhabitants of Kalos and Paldea steered clear of the crater due to lingering fear of one another. Now, the reason why it's dubbed Area Zero is rather straightforward. Essentially, it's a ground zero, akin to the point on Earth's surface directly above or below an exploding nuclear bomb. Now, interpret this as you will, but it surprisingly aligns with the reality. I understand there are also Area 1, 2, 3 and so on, but consider this: they might represent different parts of the old Paldean Empire, each numbered numerically, while the once thriving region of the Great Crater was marked with the number 0, signifying nothing, as it had been erased. However, I'm getting ahead of myself, as I haven't yet unfolded the story of why or how Xerneas revitalized this barren land. As you may or may not know, Xerneas is one of the main legendaries from the Pokemon X and Y games, defined as the life Pokemon in the Pokédex. We understand its involvement in the war from an NPC's tale, recounting how Xerneas is said to have rescued wounded Pokemon during an ancient conflict. Now, it's plausible that this occurred during the war, but if Xerneas had appeared during active combat, wouldn't those engaged have sought to claim it for themselves? It makes more sense as Xerneas manifested after humans had evacuated certain areas. Therefore, I propose that after the war concluded, Xerneas found its way to the now known Area Zero, descending into the ever-expanding depths. It utilized its life energy to rejuvenate the land and any surviving Pokemon. In the process, Xerneas transformed into a tree, a silent witness to the healing it bestowed down from within the caves, where it remains till this day. Now, if you're confused why it turned into a tree, here's one of its Pokédex entries from X and Y. Legends say it can share eternal life. It slept for 1,000 years in the form of a tree before its revival. We also get to see this happen in the Pokemon movie Diancie and the Cocoon of Destruction. But wait, I hear you cry, if it only sleeps for 1,000 years, wouldn't it have left already? Well, I have an explanation for that too. You see, due to the terastallization energy being so potent at this point, over time, Xerneas' tree got crystallized and has been unable to transform back because of this, as there's a random tree that's been fully crystallized down in the depths of Area Zero, all on its own. And the further up you go, other trees are beginning to get taken over. And I know some of you are telling me to hold up with my theory, as if this was all true, then why was it Xerneas in Pokemon X, as it's been frozen down here for all this time? Well, that's easy, because of the Pokemon multiverse. Back in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, a trainer named Xerneas alludes to the existence of multiple universes like their own, when devising a plan to divert an incoming meteorite. And it wasn't just this game. This concept was further explored in future games such as Ultra Sun and Moon, where we encountered the villains of past games who made their evil goals come to fruition through the use of Rainbow Rocket. So to put it simply, Scarlet and Violet took place in a timeline where the events of X and Y didn't happen. Or perhaps it occurred in the timeline of Pokemon Y's events, as Xerneas wasn't part of that game. This also reinforces my theory regarding the time machine being built in the future, or perhaps more of the reason for it being constructed in Area Zero. Through science, we're aware that when a massive explosion occurs, it generates substantial amounts of energy, and with enough force, it can distort space and time. Just consider what happens when a star undergoes a colossal explosion and collapses. It creates a black hole that warps space and time. Therefore, there's considerable likelihood that the energy released from the ultimate weapon caused a disturbance in space and time down in Area Zero. And as a scientist, the professor would have been in tune enough to interpret these signs, recognizing that this was the optimal location to construct the time machine. And as witnessed in the game's story, it proved successful. Well, to some extent, but I'll delve into that in another theory. But now we have that cleared up, we still have some questions to cover. This no man's land I mentioned earlier in the story, I assume it would have formed over many years, with both regions being afraid to expand the land any further to prevent a recurrence of past events. And where is this land? Well, it's in the northeastern part of the Paldea region, clearly outlined on the map as not being a part of Paldea. The same would apply to Kalos too, with its people lacking access to it from the south of the region. Even though 3,000 years have passed, it's common for no man's land to remain unchanged, as all surrounding countries need to agree on who gets it. To further support my belief that this is a region-free zone is the clear indication on the Paldean map with a crossed out mark. Despite having 2 DLCs added to Scarlet and Violet already, which provided 2 opportunities to address this section of the map, it still remains unaltered. In other Pokemon games, inaccessible parts of the region are typically either displayed on the map as a landmass or covered up by a layer of clouds. I mean, true, Area Zero also has this particular crossed out pattern, but we also know that it's off limits to the public. We only ventured there because we chose to. Lastly, let's delve into something you might be pondering. Why didn't we learn about the war within the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet video games? Well, this can be explained in more than one way. The first possibility is that it was simply too long ago to remember most details, much like the mystery surrounding Stonehenge or the construction of the pyramids in our own time. I mean, we can make educated guesses, but the passage of time leaves many historical details uncertain. Even in the Kalos games, we only have a tale passed down by a few NPCs about AZ, and the full story remains elusive. Even in the Kanto games, we only hear Lieutenant Surge mention the Kanto War once. The second reason for us to consider is the desire to prevent reopening old wounds or creating divisions among different groups within the Paldean population. Perhaps the people of Paldea simply wanted to move on, given that over 3,000 years have passed. And of course, there's a possibility that none of this ever happened in the first place, as this is just a theory, a Kanto theory. Thank you all so much for watching. Creating this video took a lot of research and editing, but I honestly had an absolute blast making it. So if you enjoyed watching and listening to this crazy theory, then please drop a like. And if you're feeling extra kind, then why not subscribe, as I'll be posting a lot more Pokemon theories and content on my channel. Also, whilst I was editing this video, Pokemon dropped the first teaser for Legend Z, and I'm absolutely excited for it. So I'll definitely be making a theory video about that soon. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and feel free to let me know your thoughts on this theory down in the comments. Until next time, bye!